How are you guys doing? Today is Sunday, December 5th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Christian Yellich. The elite left fielder for the Milwaukee Brewers turns 30 today, and what I'm going to do for this episode is do an in-depth review of what he's been able to do from the moment that he stepped foot into the majors. And of course, he's been quite an amazing player in the majors that people have kind of forgotten about, despite the fact that he won an MVP not that long ago. And right before I get into the history of what makes Christian Yellich, of course, I'm going to give an in-depth look into how he impacts the game of baseball on a micro level. We're talking about game in, game out, season in, season out. I'm going to take a step back and look at how he's been able to impact the game from a macro level, considering there are hundreds of thousands of people that are gunning for his job, and he has established himself as one of the best outfielders to not only be a starter for the Brewers, but to be one of the best players and be recognized as one of the best hitters in the National League for almost 2 seasons in a row. So, with that said, getting into Christian Yellich's career, he's originally from Thousand Oaks, California. He went to Westlake High School. Coming from Los Angeles, I'm well aware of Westlake High School. He would, of course, accept scholarships to play college baseball, but he would go on to be taken out of high school in the first round with the 23rd overall selection in the MLB draft by the Marlins, as I believe the team that had drafted him at that point in 2010 was the Florida Marlins. They would, of course, go under the name switch, and they would become the Miami Marlins while he was a member of the organization, while he was a member of the minor league affiliate. But he would officially get called up for the team in his age 21 season in 2013 when they were already the Miami Marlins. Christian Yellich's very first season was his age 21 season, and that year he would play 62 games for a Miami Marlins team that went 62-100. That would be the first time under the Miami Marlins name that they had lost 100 games. In that very first season, he would go on to finish with 69 hits, which is 7 more hits than games played. He had 34 runs, 12 doubles, 4 home runs, 16 RBIs. Looking at how his percentages finished up, he had a 288 batting average and would finish off with a 766 OPS. So even his first season there, he could show that he was definitely a player that deserved to be on that level. But of course, he would get better than that naturally. His first full season with the Miami Marlins would be his age 22 season in 2014. He would go on to play 144 games in a season in which the Marlins would finish with a 77-85 record. As Casey McGay, he became the comeback player of the year, and this is the year after Jose Fernandez was the rookie of the year. So Yellich and Fernandez came up in the same year. But the year after that, like I said, they had 15 more wins as they were looking like an up-and-coming team. In that season, he would go on to finish with 165 hits in the 144 games he played. That's 21 more hits than games. He would finish with 94 runs on the season, the first time in Miami that he would put up that many runs in a season. He would finish with 30 doubles for the first time in his career. He had 6 triples, which is the second most amount of triples he's ever had. And he had 9 home runs alongside 54 RBIs. Once the year ended, he would finish with a 284 batting average and a 764 OPS. He would go on to finish with 234 total bases, as this would be his first full year in the league. He would go on to be named a Gold Glove winner. The only time he was given a Golden Glove was his first full season in Miami. Even though Miami did not make the playoffs, Christian Yellich, in just his first full season, was showing people that he was definitely there to stay. His second full season with the Marlins would be his age 23 season in 2015. As in that season, he would go on to miss a few games. He would go on to bruise his knee, but this was right after he would finalize a 7-year, $50 million deal. In his second full season with the team, his third year with the Marlins, he would finish with 143 hits in 126 games. That's 17 more hits than games. He had 63 runs on the ground. He would finish with 30 doubles for the second year in a row, despite playing 18 less games. He had 2 triples, 7 home runs alongside 44 RBIs. He would finish his season with a 300 batting average, the first time that he would have a 300 batting average in a season. His OPS was 782, higher than what it was the previous couple years, as he was, of course, becoming a beacon of consistency. Following that 2015 season, they would go into Christian Yellich's third season with the team. His fourth year being with the Marlins, his third full season as a full-time member. In his age 24 season, Christian Yellich would go on to play 155 games in 2016 for a Marlins team that went 79-82. In the time that he was with the Marlins, that is actually the best record that the Marlins would have with him there. In that season, they would Christian Yellich had 172 hits. That's the most hits he's ever had in any of his 5 seasons with the Miami Marlins. He had 17 more hits in games. He had 78 runs on the ground. His 38 doubles are the most doubles he's ever put together in a season. That was the third season in a row he's put together at least 30 of them. He had 30 triples. He would put together he would cross the 20 home run threshold for the very first time in his 4-year career, as he would hit 21 home runs alongside 98 RBIs. His 98 RBIs is the second most amount of RBIs he's ever put together in a season. He would go on to finish with a 298 batting average and an 859 OPS, as his 859 OPS was the highest it had been up until that point. He was given the Silver Slugger Award as an outfielder for the very first time in his career, and he would even get a couple of MVP votes, but he was pretty far from winning MVP that year. Following that 2016 season, he, of course, would go on to return for what would be his last season for the Miami Marlins. He would start alongside Marcell Ozuna and Giancarlo Stanton, both of whom would end up being all-stars that year. Christian Yellich would, in his final season with the Miami Marlins, in his 5th year there in 2017, in his age 25 season, Yellich would play 156 games, the most games he played in an MLB season for a Miami Marlins team that would end up going 77-85. They had won 2 less games than the prior year. In his last year in Miami was the year that Giancarlo won the MVP in the National League, but on his way, Christian Yellich was able to put up some incredible numbers. He would finish with 100 hits, or 170 hits in those 156 games. The third time he crossed the 160 hit threshold mark. He would also go on to cross 100 runs for the first time in his career. The second time he scored at least 90. He had 36 doubles on the year. The second year in a row he's had at least 35. And the fourth year in a row he put together at least 30. He would go on to finish with 18 home runs and 81 RBIs on the year. He would finish with a 282 batting average and an 807 OPS. This would be the second year in a row his OPS was over 800. But he was starting to become that fully established all-around hitting force that, or at least the 5-tool talent that the NL saw him as. But nonetheless, in his 5 years in Miami, he was not named an All-Star once. Following his 5 years in Miami, he would go on and get traded to the Milwaukee Brewers for Lewis Brinson, Isan Diaz, Monte Harrison, and Jordan Yamamoto. As soon as he went to the Milwaukee Brewers, you would say his career kind of flipped a new page. He has been a member of the Brewers for the last 4 seasons. His first season with Milwaukee was his age 26 season in 2018. In that season, he would play 147 games for a Milwaukee Brewers team that would eventually go on and finish with a 96-67 record. They would win the National League Central after 6 seasons of not winning it. The last time they had won it was 2011. They had won 10 more games compared to their prior season. In Yellich's first full season with the Brewers, he had 187 hits in his 147 games. That would be the most hits he's ever put together in a season. And he would go on, and his 40 more hits than games played, I believe, is the best ratio he would put together in a season. He would go on to finish with 118 runs in his first season in Milwaukee, the most runs he's put together in a season. And the second time in a row, he crossed 100 runs. The third time in his career, he scored at least 90. He would go on to finish with 34 doubles, making it the 5th year in a row he's had at least 30 doubles. Making it a half decade straight is incredible. He would finish with 7 triples, the most triples that he's ever put together in a season. He would finish with 36 home runs. The first time he would cross the 25 even the 35 home run threshold mark. He would finish with 110 RBIs, the first time he's had 100 RBIs, and the third season in a row he's put together at least 80. His 22 stolen bases at that point were the second time he's had at least 20, and the most stolen bases he had at that point. At the conclusion of the year, he held the National League batting title with a .326 batting average. Of course, that would make sense with 187 hits in a year. He would go on to finish with a .402 on-base percentage, the first time his on-base percentage went above 400. He would finish with a .598 slugging percentage, the first time his slugging percentage had crossed the 500 threshold, and it was almost at 600. He would finish with an OPS of exactly 1,000, tying for the NL high in slugging percentage and in OPS. His OPS plus was the highest in the National League as well, as his 164 OPS was 64 points higher than the average slugger. He would finish with 343 total bases, the first time he crossed 300 total bases, and this is the most that he would put together in a season, and it's the only time in his career he would lead the entire National League in total bases touched. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the very first time in his first season with Milwaukee. He was named a Silver Slugger for the second time in a 3-year stretch. He would go on to be named the MVP of the National League. After being named the MVP in 2018, the Brewers would go on into the playoffs, so they would sweep the Rockies in the divisional series just to lose in the championship series to the LA Dodgers. This season would end up with the Dodgers losing in 5 games to in the 2018 World Series to the Boston Red Sox. But of course, that transitions into Yellich's second season with the Brewers, which arguably could have been better than his first. He would go on to play 130 games for a Milwaukee Brewers team that would end up going 89-73, finishing second in their division. In that second season, he would go on to be the 6th player in MLB history to hit a home run in each of his team's first 4 games. He would go on to be the first player in Brewers history to hit 30 home runs before the All-Star break, but he would go on to withdraw himself from the home run derby from a back injury, and he would end up hitting a foul ball off his kneecap, which would prematurely end his season. But this arguably could have been a season that he went back-to-back, but he would end up finishing runner-up to Cody Bellinger. And even after this season, you haven't really seen the same Christian Yellich. In his last full season, in which he's played at least 130 games, he would play 130 games for a Brewers team that would eventually go on to finish second in the NL Central, but they did qualify for the wild card. In that season, Yellich would go on to finish with 161 hits in 130 games. It's 31 more hits than games played. He had 100 runs for the 3rd season in a row, and for the 4th time in a 6-year stretch. He has not scored 100 runs since 2019. He would finish with 29 doubles, effectively ending his 5-year stretch of having at least 30 doubles. He has not had a 30-double season since his first MVP season in 2018. He finished with 3 triples. He would set a career high in home runs that year as he had 44 of them, as he had 97 RBIs. His 97 RBIs is the 3rd most amount of RBIs he's put together in a season, in the 4th year straight that he was able to put together at least 80. He has not recorded 80 RBIs since 2019. He would finish with 30 stolen bases, the most stolen bases he's put together in a season. He would finish with the batting title in the National League for the 2nd year in a row, as it was at 329, just a tick higher than it was the year prior, and it was the 3rd year that he would put together a 300 batting average season. This would be the first and only time in his MLB career that he led the National League in on-base percentage at 429. This would be the 2nd year in a row his on-base percentage was above 400. He hasn't had it above 400 since then, or his batting average above 300, or his slugging percentage above 500 since 2019. In 2019, his slugging percentage was 671, the only time in his career he would surpass the 600 threshold. The second time he would pass 500, let alone 590 as well. He would finish with an OPS of 1,100. He would go on, this would be the 2nd time in his career he led the National League in OPS, and the 2nd time his OPS was above 1,000, which is incredible, which is a virtuoso hitting season. He would go on to lead the National League in OPS plus, hitting 79 points better than the average slugger in the National League at 179. He would finish with 328 total bases, making it the 2nd year in a row he's touched 300 bases. He has not touched at least two. He hasn't even touched 200 bases since 2019. Just to give you a sense of how tough these last years have been on Christian Yellich. Once that season came to an end and he wasn't participating with his team in the playoffs, they ended up losing in the wild card game to the eventual World Series champs Washington Nationals. That would transition into his third season with the Milwaukee Brewers, his age 28 season in 2020. And if you remember very well, that season was shortened because of COVID. He would play 58 games for a Milwaukee Brewers team that would go 29-31. They finished with the fourth best record in the NL Central, but because the playoffs were expanded, they were just able to make it into the playoffs before they got swept in the wild card round by the Dodgers. In the regular season, he had 41 hits in the 58 games he played in his first season back from injury. That's 17 less hits than games played. He still had 39 runs on the year. He finished with a 205 batting average and a combined 786 OPS. As the season was kind of a lost season for many. But once that season came to an end, like I said, the Brewers would end up getting smoked in the wild card. And this, of course, would lead to this most recent season that he played with the Brewers in his age 21 season. He would have to spend over half the months of April and May on the injured list because of back problems. But in May this year, or I guess, he would go on to come back. In his age 29 season, he would go on to play 117 games for a Milwaukee Brewers team that just won the National League Central with a 95-67 record. That's the second time they've won the NL Central since he's gotten there, as the first time they had won it was the year he had gotten there, his MVP season. Christian Yellich would go on to finish with 99 hits in the 117 games he played. That's 18 less hits than games played, and he had 70 runs. He would finish with 19 doubles, 2 triples, 9 home runs, and 51 RBIs. He finished with a 248 batting average and a 736 OPS. This is the second year removed from his injury, but of course, we should still be able to. I completely do not rule out Christian Yellich's return, as his injuries during his prime did definitely ruin a lot of momentum that he had, but I still think that Christian Yellich is one of the best all-around baseball players in the game, and it'll be a second until I believe otherwise. But as of right now, Christian Yellich is now entering his 30s, as a lot of players tend to get better with their hitting as they enter their 30s. As of right now, I'm still really kind of watching by to see what happens with Christian Yelich this upcoming season. I can't wait to see what he does with the Brewers this year, and hopefully you all get a chance to watch him too. He's wearing number 22 if you ever get a chance. And with that said, I want to thank the MLB and Pro Baseball Reference websites for giving me all the facts and information I needed. I would not be able to do this without them. With that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you with more tomorrow. Thanks for listening to this piece, and peace out. I'm James Sims.